Hello, everyone. This is Ed Breniger, and welcome to the Eddy Network podcast. My guest today is Evelien, and we are just meeting for the first time, and she's already piqued my curiosity at a really high level. So, welcome. I'm glad you're here. I'm glad we're getting to know each other. And so, tell us a little bit about yourself. Where do you live? Where do you live?
First of all, thank you, Ed, to invite me. I was really looking forward to the conversation today.
Me too.
Um, at the moment, no, I'm living in Antwerp, in Belgium, so in Europe. Um, it's in a little village between Antwerp and the Netherlands, in fact. So I can go by bike to the Netherlands. So that's
Uh-huh.
quite near. Um, yeah, who am I? That's a very big question. Not that
We have an
I'm
hour. We
a
have an
great,
hour to talk about it.
yeah,
So,
yeah. So um I would say I'm an artist, I'm an entrepreneur, I'm very curious. I like to learn, I'm eager to learn, to discover. Um and I'm into, yeah, uh thinking, cognition, the cognitive science, and I'm playing with that, and especially on my playground, which is learning. So I'm a little bit like, how do you say it, a reflective, uh, a reflective relational lizard or something like that. If you have to put an image on it.
that's a lot to unpack. And
Yeah,
been this,
yeah.
have you been this way all your life?
Yes. Sometimes I try to flip my answer, and I think I'm really somebody who reflect a lot also on myself and about my behavior, because that's metacognition, where I'm really into it, and I like to talk about it. But if I do that with on myself, I can say I have like uh, a trinity of three core concepts that really reflects me well, I think. And the first one is observation. I really like to observe, uh, and observe with all my senses. Um, Also feeling and trying to read the air, as we also say. Uh, as an artist, I do it, because if you want to, yeah, if you want to draw or to paint, you really have to observe. But it's not only observing with the eyes, but also what is what do you feel at the moment, and to try to put that on a paper. So that's one thing. So it's a kind of, if I would um pick a word on it, or a more, yeah, maybe it's too scientifically, you can say it's sensory anthropology. You sense the with all your senses the environment, and what does with you. A second word is imagination. Imagination, like an artist, you have to do it, but also I think on the workplace, and when you are with people, trying to understand people, trying to understand the environment, it helps to have a lot of imagination, and that creative vibe with there, and to discover, to wonder. I like to wonder and to wonder, to wonder and to wonder. That's something I do a lot, because I walk a lot, and then I wander together with my dog.
I feel like I've met my twin.
It's
I'm
really
very
nice.
similar to to what you're describing. Very similar.
Yes,
Observation,
yes. And
imagination,
then,
wandering, all of that. Yes. Love
mhm,
change. Love to be in transition. Uh,
yes.
and what was your
And
childhood like? What was the best parts of your childhood? Because if all of this was
to
present then, that's what
yeah.
I'm curious to hear.
I didn't really realize until not so long ago, but I was most of the time all alone. I lived in my own reality. Uh, I, 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 I was always creative, so make crafting, drawing. That was the thing I did a lot. I was a dreamer. I'm still a dreamer, but and I didn't have a lot of um, friends. But on the other side, everybody was my friend.
Yeah.
So it was like,
Totally.
yeah,
Totally. Yeah. I totally
yeah,
get that.
yeah. And sometimes what was a little bit maybe hard at the moment, I have dyslexia, and it was not always that easy at school.
Yeah.
But on the other side, I think that's also my power, because when you're a small child and you have to fit in a certain system, which is education, and you, in fact, you don't fit well in it, you try to find your own structure and ways to do things
You learn
and to fit in a certain way.
to adapt well.
Yes, yes, and to find my own ways to yeah to fit in some systems. And um, I think it helped me also because it helped me to be really flexible and easily adapt to things. On the other side, both my parents were working, and when I was a little child, they put me sometimes. There wasn't an organized systems to take care of children after school. So I went to families, and my mother really put me in very uh, diverse families. I was with a family who had a handicapped mother, um, who were quite poor, but on the other side, I was also in an intercultural family. In my family, it's a really intercultural family. So I had also a lot of contacts in that way, which made that from a young age, I had to adapt and to be flexible. And I loved it because I was curious and it was normal for me. And sometimes it's difficult now or when you're older because, of course, you're thinking from your own framework and your own experience, and you think that everybody's like that, but it's not like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But because you're different, you can see the differences in others
Hmm.
and appreciate
Yes.
those differences.
Yes, of course. Yes. But because if I always say a complex situation, you cannot resolve or find a solution with one logic or alone. So you have to be with other people to solve the problem.
Mm-hmm.
And the differences between people, and when everybody can put his or her strengths or vision or insights or expertise together, that's the way we can go all together forward and we can search solutions.
So, how do you spend your days? Well, like today is Thursday. What have you done today? How do you put your days together?
Yeah, Thursday is a special day because I'm living quite near the market, and I like to go to the market because I like to have contact with the people from who I buy food.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so I did that today, and afterwards I made a quite long walk with my dog because I wanted to reflect on things. Um, a few months ago, my website was hacked. So, and I said I need really to build a new website. And when I'm walking, when you're moving, your thinking goes better. And I was reflecting about the structure and how to say things. So I did that, and afterward, I worked also on the website, and I had a really nice call with Olaf Hermans, who you know also, because we are often in conversations and dialoguing to learn from one another and to have a different perspective. And because together with him, I also developed the what I call the BOBIP method. It's a method I use for learning and for collective knowledge. And so I was working and thinking around that. And normally, after this call, I was really looking forward also for this call. I will take some time to do some printing because I did some lino cut designs. And this evening, I will print them. So it's really also, ooh, I'm excited to see how it will work. Yeah,
And you said lino cut, right?
yeah.
And so what what's the media for that? What
Mhm.
are you cutting into? Is it like
Linoleum,
what's
linoleum.
linoleum? Okay.
What linoleum? Yes,
Mhm.
and it's funny because if you look at other artistic ways of printing, like litho printing, you draw, and what you draw will be printed in black on a paper.
Uh-huh.
But with lino, it's the reverse.
Right.
So what you cut away will be white, and what is left will be black or the other color. It's a little bit like what you have done in kindergarten with potatoes. Huh? You have a potato and you cut something and then you put it in the paint and then you make stamps.
Well, it's what
That's
a sculptor does. They remove what's not needed, and what's
yeah,
left what is needed, and that's
yeah,
what you're doing.
yeah,
Very
yes,
interesting.
yes, yes.
How long have you
Yeah.
been doing that kind of artwork?
But drawing from I was a little child, but lino cutting itself, not even 1 year. I think 9 or 10 months, and I like it because it's also a combination with a certain technique and a cognition vision of it. Because you have to, even if you want to print a text, which is possible, you have to write it in like in the mirror. So you have to rethink everything in reverse. And that's something I like to do. It's a little bit, yeah, it triggers me. It's like, oh, yeah, yeah.
Touches
Um,
touches parts of your brain that don't actually get exercised very often, I would say.
yeah. But I will confess something. You know, with my dyslexia, I don't make so much faults when I write. How do you write it? Write it like in a mirror? Mm?
Uh-huh.
And when I was at the university, when I was studying, I made my notes like that. So I write really easy in the mirror.
Is that right? Wow. I'm fascinated by that. And so you've learned to compensate for all kinds of different things.
Yeah, well, for me, it's
But
normal.
it's not really compensation, it's just adapting to the way the world is for you.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
And
I never really did
um,
it by conscious. It's like,
so so do you encounter people who have similar strengths like you, where they're different, the strengths are different than others, and they're not typical strengths. So they're different kind of strengths.
mhm. um, exactly the same. No, but yeah, people who are different. Oh, yeah, I encounter them, and in a way, you feel it, and there's a click because you see that um, yeah, they adapt also, and often they are curious also.
I asked that because, I have a similar experience of being able, I'm a big picture person and
Yeah.
not a detail person, not at all. And details wear
Yes.
me out.
Mm.
And so I never fit into the traditional organizational structures very well.
Hmm.
They're all very detail oriented and they're not big picture.
Yes.
I
No.
would, this is the way I would describe it. I would be included, but I never felt like I fit in. And so a lot of the
Mm.
people that I've met, particularly after I started the podcast, are people who have a similar sense of like their life. Yes, I've been included, but I don't feel like I fit in. I don't feel like I'm like these people, even though they have accepted me into their group and I'm working with them. And
Mm.
I wonder if that is a similar experience that you have had.
Yeah. And to be honest, I don't feel included even at the moment.
Yeah, well, I think
Yeah.
that's true for a lot of things too, for me as well.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
But
what it does,
yeah.
you know what it does? It makes us more sensitive to people who have a similar experience.
Hmm.
And it makes us more likely to include them in our little world,
Hmm.
whatever that is.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
It's
Hmm.
hard though, isn't it?
Um, it's hard and not. I'm. It's hard. For example, now when I'm really going to look at the practical way at the moment, yes, it's hard because I'm an entrepreneur to find projects who are interesting for me, where I'm triggered, who who appreciate also my added value. Then it's hard because when you don't find it, yeah, you don't have the money. So you have to be
That's right.
the practical, uh, yeah.
So
But
what does your entrepreneurial business do? What's the business that you're an entrepreneur in?
yeah, so I'm within learning and learning of well, learning, but learning in groups. So it can be a learning community, like the community of practice. It can be a group of consultants, for example, in a consultancy firm who have all their own experience and tacit knowledge, and the knowledge they get from the experience they had. It can be transdisciplinary teams or innovation teams, and those two the transdisciplinary teams and innovation teams I work often with, or that are the groups where I work most with. For example, when you have a wicked problem like like COVID, we all lived in that period. There were a lot of experts, but they all look at the wicked problem, the virus, from their own point of view.
Yeah,
And I don't know if you tried, but you it's not easy to um, let experts, scientific experts, and researchers talk with each other because they're really in depth, they're the details ones. And then I work with those groups so they can see um, that they all have to offer something and they get some other knowledge from the other experts. So I will make a sketch how I do it. There are some theory of change. So you have a problem, and then and they ask you how would you change that? And first of all, they need to make a individual theory of change. They share that, and then they have to make a common theory of change, and then they are talking the same language, and then we can go on. what I do also is to gain that common theory of change, you have to take metacognition, relational metacognition. And that's what I said. And that's why, for example, the BOBIP method, who is a method based on relational relational metacognition, excuse me, to support individual and groups learning. Simply said, and that's the explanation of relational cognition and relational metacognition, you have a group of people who needs to learn something. All individuals have their own knowledge and experience with them, but often they cannot position themselves in a group.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes in a group, you are the one who is better in math, and sometimes somebody else is better. You don't know that. And to help them to position themselves, I will have ongoing individual conversations with those individuals to reflect and to help them to position them in the group. So they know, I'm better in math, so I can help, for example, Ed. And Ed is better in languages and he can help Julia, for example. I say something. And this gives a certain dynamic in a group for learning, because somebody, if you want to learn and you have to explain something to somebody else, that's also a way of learning. And the learner, in this case, will see, or it will be explained to the learner in another way again. So another way is also maybe easier for that person. And you will get some validation from each other, and that gives a dynamic. And that's why the individual learning accelerates, but also the collective knowledge, because they share more. I give the example of math and languages because it's quite general. It's a class situation. It's not that difficult to understand.
So
now you can say, but is that not? Yeah.
So when this is working well,
Mm-hmm.
what is it? How do you describe the character of the relationships in that group? What's that like in the group when you've helped people begin to see how they learn and how each person learns, and they've begun to communicate well doing that? What happens to their relationships with each other?
Yeah, maybe it's good. When I say relationship, I don't mean a connection. A connection for me, it's not that deep.
Mm-hmm.
A relationship is in fact a commitment, and if one commit to the other to take a part of the responsibility
Right.
of the learning part of the other, that is the relation. And they will have different relations, and the group has also it's not static, it's very dynamic, because when you learn better math, maybe there's somebody else later on who you can help with the math. So it's not fixed.
I asked the question because when almost 30 years ago, when I began as a consultant, when I began my consulting practice, one of the things I identified was in these organizational groups, respect and trust was missing in the relationships. And the question is,
Yes.
how do we build respect and trust between us in these groups?
Mm-hmm.
And that's been an ongoing search or
Yes.
question.
Yes. So what I do is, like, the biggest problem of all is that often within groups, the manager or the leader will have conversations with the individuals, but there's a large power relation between them. So people will not say the truth or their own feelings, or they will they will not do it. So to do that, I say you have to take a neutral authority, somebody who is not their boss, who cannot decide if they are fired or get a promotion or anyone. So that's one. Then you can say if it's one person who needs to talk, for example, with the 50 consultants, yeah, it takes a lot of work. It's not scalable. Yes, it is scalable. And that's what I worked on together with Olaf, that we can do it with short meetings or even with messages, to give questions. It's a matrix. It's well defined which kind of questions to help the individual to position themselves. And how do we do it? We do not have one conversation with an individual. We will have ongoing conversation. So the second time I will talk with the individual, I have the data from all the other ones in the group. So it's like the individual talk with the group.
Right.
And that's the way the person can position him or herself. So the power relation or the social acceptance
Right.
way of answering questions is taken away. So, yeah, and it stays anonymous. So we will not give the data, the detailed data to the managers or any, no, or to the. No. So that's the way it works.
That's great. It's very innovative.
It's innovative, yes, but that's also the way. That's also because of that. It's also difficult to do projects because
Yeah.
people, it's social innovation, people are eager for technical
Yeah.
innovation, but social innovation, no.
I totally agree. Because what I was seeing, I saw, when I began my consulting work, I saw three patterns of behavior. One was a lack of clarity about ideas. People weren't thinking clearly.
Yeah.
One
Mm-hmm.
was the lack of respect and trust in relationships because
Mm-hmm.
because of the power dynamics.
Mm-hmm.
Then I
Yep.
saw how the structure um, was the obstacle to change and the obstacle to seeing beyond whatever is going on in that power dynamic. And so the structure is both organizational and social. And both of them
Yeah.
are obstacles that have to be overcome for the company or the group to be able to come together and to advance into a new place of, and I don't know if that's scalable either, but that's what I saw. And that's what I've been working at for
Mm-hmm.
30 years now.
Yeah. Uh, yeah. But indeed, in our society, and especially also in organizations and in education, everything is very structured, and it's a really transactional way of thinking. We have to grow, it has to be linear, it has to go fast, efficient, ta 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 ta. But we forget, and that's transactional thinking and acting, but we forget the relational part. Often we talk about the uh, if they talk about leadership, I'm not so in leadership, but they say the formal and the informal leadership. And the informal leadership, no, they are parallel. And for me, they're both formal in the sense they have their influences one on the other. And
I,
it's not the one or the other. No, it's both.
you have
But
to
we are focusing on the structure and the process and the rules.
you have to be very intentional to change that. And I think it's not a question of structure. It's not a question of the social dynamics. It's a question of the character of the leader. The leader has to come to a point of saying, I need to change. I need to become a different person for my leadership to have the effect that I want it to have.
Yeah.
I mean,
And only when he, yeah, go
and
on.
what I mean by that is a senior leader, say the CEO, is no longer driven by his ego or her ego, but sees that their role is that of facilitating the leadership of everyone else. They are facilitating the work of everybody else. They're creating the conditions where everybody else succeeds. And that's a change of mindset and change of character. That's a character change that is required. And most of these people at the top level of organizations that I know don't have that capacity to do that very well.
No, and that's a pity because there again, when they don't do on the metacognitive, they don't think on the metacognitive level to think about why am I doing this like this in relation to the environment, to the others. If they do that, and we don't learn it at school, to think like that, but if you do that, you will probably become a better leader. I'm not in leadership. I have a question for you, in fact, because I've seen you did a lot of podcasts, and it often goes, and you often talk also about leadership.
Yeah, I'm a leadership guy.
Yeah, what after all those podcasts, what did you learn something new about leadership? Did you become another leader? I'm curious.
It's a great question. Um, I think what I learned, uh, it confirmed what I already, everything I've seen in my conversations with people confirms what I knew, which is that
Mm-hmm.
everybody has the potential for making a difference that matters. And that's what I
Mm-hmm.
define leadership. Because when you create change,
Okay.
you are leading. And when an organization's all of its members are creating change, then the fear of change and the resistance to change and the the problems that come with fear go away, because what you have done is you've released people to go out and do their very best, and it's a beautiful thing to see. So I'm more convinced of this than ever, and I'm also convinced that the way we have been operating as a global community of organizations is coming to an end because it is no longer workable. It's no longer
Mm-hmm.
sustainable because you have the growing complexity of life and you have this need for centralized control. And you cannot adapt well to the complexity level that we are facing in the world by a few people being in control. And you have to release
Mm-hmm.
that control and give it to people, because then they're going to adapt and they're going to make changes and they're going to do things which create new things, new things. And one of the ways I talk about this is that, and I wrote about it in a post recently called "The Speed of Change." The faster you change, the more often you change, the slower change becomes, because you're no longer working out of the anxiety that it comes with change, because everybody gets anxious. For some reason, they think that we can stay the way we have always been. No,
Mm-hmm.
that's inhuman and unscientific and non-historical and poorly philosophical, and it doesn't work. You cannot remain the same. You can only either decline or move forward. That's the only two options. And if you try to avoid change, try to just to stay the way we've always been, you'll end up declining and you'll end up closing your business. So
Yeah. No. Mhm.
so I'm more convinced of that.
Yeah.
And
Mhm.
And the second thing, and this really goes to your question, what I have discovered, I don't, and let me before I say what I'm going to say, my podcast is built off of by networking through introductions. So the vast majority of
Mhm.
the people are on here have been introduced to me by someone else, and I didn't go looking for them. And what has appeared is um, three, three or four different kinds of people. There are a lot of
Mhm.
artists that have shown up. There are polymaths that have shown up who are
Mhm.
fascinating. There are
Mhm.
neurodivergent people who have shown up.
Mhm.
And there are people who um, have decided to change their lives um, because whatever they were doing no longer works for them.
Mhm.
And so if this is a um, a landscape of who people are in the world today, then we're seeing something emerge that is not like what we found in the old industrial age, where everybody had a job and they did the same thing every day, punched the clock, went to their desk, went to the machine, and they did their 8 hours and they went home, came back, they did that for 5 days a week, and they did that for 35, 40 years. No, now the whole everything is organized around you have to take personal initiative if you're going to survive. You have, and so the need for entrepreneurial skills is greater than ever before. It doesn't mean you create an entrepreneurial business, but the entrepreneurial
No, no. Yeah,
and I
skills.
and I've thought for 20 years that we should be teaching entrepreneurial skills in elementary school or primary school. Teach eighth and ninth and 10th graders how to start a business.
Mhm.
Because
Mhm.
if once they learn that, and they'll learn it, they learn it because I mean they learn how to do sports, they learn how to play instruments, they can learn how to start something, and by the time they're in middle school and high school, they will have businesses. They'll have online businesses, and
Mhm.
they will have shifted the entire notion of work from this thing over the age of 20 down to from say 10 till I mean, now you're going to
Mhm.
start your business life at 10, 12 years of age and go until you're 80. So you got let's say you
Mhm.
have 70 years of work life ahead of you, or 70 years of opportunity to make a difference that matters instead of 30 years or 40 years. That's what I'm
Mhm. Okay. Okay. When you were talking, I was thinking about a few things. If you talk with the people invite, there's a lot of confirmation. So about what they're saying
Yeah,
and what
that's
you're
true.
seeing, and then I think we have to think also at the power of the stranger. It is very interesting to talk with a stranger who doesn't think the same like you, because then you get the new insights. Huh? So I was talking about learning. So did you learn something? Really? Did maybe yes, when you did a bit of meta cognitive, relational metacognitive thinking, and you did because you said some things you see how did that, so that is really learning, and that is what we don't learn in education or at home. Some learn at home. Yeah. Yeah.
Let me say this to you. I think you're exactly right. The power of the stranger, or as Mark Granovetter called it, the strength of weak ties, is the person
Mm-hmm.
who knows something and the only reason you know them is because of that one thing. And that one thing is really
Mm-hmm.
can have a very significant impact upon you. But what I would say in my own life, so I'm 71 years old.
Mm-hmm.
I have learned more and changed more and and grown more as a person in the last 10 years than I did in the previous 60. And I think
Okay.
and I think it's because I started over. I quit everything that I
Mm.
had done prior and I started over. I mean, even moved across the country, moved to a different place in the United States and started all over. And and I am so glad I did that. I am um I don't recommend that to everybody. I don't think they
Mm.
should follow my lead in that regard. But what you're saying is exactly true. So if you give up, if you sacrifice, let's say, in a sense, the all the what you may describe as your accomplishments as a younger person, and say, no, all of that is just in
Mm.
the past, and I'm going to put it in a box and stick it on a shelf or put it up in the attic or in the basement. I'm not going to even look at it until
Mm.
sometime way in the future. I'm going to start all over. And what does that look like? And and in some cases you don't know, and you just have to start with
Mm.
something.
Mm.
You respond to the people
Yes.
who are in front of you. They'll they
Yeah.
will they will tell you what you need to do. They don't know that they're telling you this.
Yeah. But who are those people? Because often people say from, yeah, when you, if you want to learn, you have to come out of your comfort zone. But it doesn't work because people go often out of their comfort zone, but with the people who they know already.
I moved to a town
And
where I knew two people.
mhm,
So that's
yeah,
but I'm comfortable meeting people. So
yeah, of course. Well, there's always, yeah,
that's why I
yeah.
say this is not a rule that I've established. This is not the rule of Ed, follow the rule of Ed and you're going to be successful. No, that's not it at all.
Mhm, mhm,
These are my choices. And
mhm.
I think some of it is taking responsibility, recognizing that unless you take responsibility, you'll never get to where you want to be.
Yes, 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 yes. And that's something about responsibility or ownership within the BOBIP method that I call complementary ownership because everybody has his expertise and goes further like that. I really, yeah, yeah, that's something I really like. What gives me, it gives, it makes me warm inside
I'm
because
glad.
you can say you share it, yes, but if you say share, there's always somebody who's going with the big piece and a small piece of the of the cake. Eh? But if you say complementary, yes, everybody gives and takes, and that's beautiful, I think.
And I think we have to be willing to give and let go of the gift and not
Yeah,
expect it to return to us in some manner.
yeah, yeah. But because when you do that, the last one, then you stay in the transactional thinking, giving and
Exactly right.
receiving. But that's that metacognition also about thinking, why did I give, why did I react, that breaks it open, I think, for me.
So have you put any of this down in writing? You written about
Yes, yes, I have with my website, but luckily
we
on Medium, and there I started also with a series of blog articles about relational cognition, how it developed from, because it's also a cognitive science and it has influences from psychology, sociology, neurosciences, anthropology, etc. And I wanted to share that because I feel it's the science itself, it's quite young. It really developed in the 1970s, 1980s, so it's young for a science. Um, and I wanted to put that also a little bit into the world. And then also what I see there's a big overlap with uh, the system thinking, but often system people who do system thinking stay in that transactional way of thinking
Yeah.
in a kind of way, and the regenerative thinking, um, and yeah, and I've written a few blogs about that, and of course also about relational metacognition and learning and innovation and in transdisciplinary teams. Yes. Mm.
I look forward to reading those things.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah.
Um,
Um, yeah, it's quite for me it's also a way to read things, to um make to reflect on it, and to give it back, and to see and to come in contact with other people. I have some great contacts because of the blogs with people on LinkedIn who are living all over the world, and sometimes we say, oh, we go and discuss things, and yeah, that's great. Yeah.
so I'm assuming that you have a rather expansive view of the world. You see the bigger picture. Am I right?
uh yes, but I don't
To other
forget
people.
also it's like, yeah, yeah,
To other people, you see the connections between things.
yeah, yeah. Mm-hmm.
So here's my question. Where do you see all of this headed into the future? What's the future look like to you? And do you have hope for the future?
I'm gonna be honest, like with all the social media and the internet, we are pushed a little bit in a bubble, and then you miss a little bit the power of the stranger. If I'm in my bubble, I see a lot of people who wants to go to that change, to more to the relational, more to the to open up, to tackle the complex problems, and wicked problems. And then on the other hand, I think, yes, is this because I'm in the bubble or not? What is going to happen? So it's um, I'm not sure. On the other side, on when I'm working, and now I'm working also on ecological construction, I see there's a lot of things who are going to happen, and in the field of learning, we have already a lot of information on the internet, but information is not learning. But to go more and more, to do things more and more open source, we have the possibilities. So there are a lot of technical possibilities who can enforce, or give force to people to change things. And now it's really time to see how will we do it in on the social level, like how, what are the relations, what do we really want. For me, yes, the end of the transactional thinking in the way that we only think that way has to be finished, because otherwise the future is not bright.
Well, I think it's coming to
um
an end. I do think it's coming to an end.
mm,
It doesn't work any longer.
mm, yeah, and what makes me hopeful is that in my work, I work a lot with the IT guys and the tech guys and the and they also start thinking like that much more sometimes than than other people. And they're also curious. So that's something that makes me happy and give me hope for the future.
I share that with you. Oh, I think you say the next 5 years are going to be tough, but after that, we're
Hmm.
we're going to see some amazing things happen, and it'll be at the level of how we work together as human beings. And
Yeah.
relational metacognition practice, if I could call it a practice, will have
Mhm.
greater importance 10 years from now than it does today. And then it will
Mhm.
become one of those significant tools because it is relational. It is bringing people
Mhm.
together in a way
Mhm.
where they are not at each other's throats.
Yes, yes. And it's not only the relation between people, but also between animals and the environment and everything. So it goes very broad. Me,
Yeah.
I'm focusing on learning, so it's more between people, but also between people and animals because I learned a lot of my
So I have one more question for you, and it's I'm curious about um, uh, are you familiar with Ian McGilchrist's work? Do you know him?
I'm not sure.
He's the psychiatrist who has written about the asymmetrical hemispheric brain,
Ah,
and
okay. Yes.
and and his and he writes about the left brain, right brain, and how the left brain is very narrow
Mm,
and very specific and can't see beyond its specificity, and the right brain is
mm,
very intuitive and very sensory oriented. I
yeah.
mean, use that term, and that it is it is should be the dominant, and
Mm,
it's where all this knowledge that gets embedded and embodied in our bodies. This is where it all resides in us, and we learn things and we know things because of how we feel, not emotionally, but how we sense what is
mhm.
true.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Em- Embodied cognitivity. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
well, there's a lot of resonance between what you're saying and what he says, and I just think it's
Yeah.
important to put those two together because I think he's on to something which is at the height of transformational in every field of academic study because it touches everything.
Mhm.
And
Yes.
and
Yes.
he wrote a book called "The Matter with Things," and as I've been
Mm,
reading it's it is. I think what I'm saying is I think you would find it very understandable because he's basically describing your life experience. He's explaining my life experience. I told him that. I said, this is like reading my annotated biography of my life. Not who, what, when, and where, but this is how you have experienced life. And it's exactly the way.
mm,
And
mm,
what you're saying is also exactly how I have experienced life and how I have gone into situations where I want people who are different to be able to talk to each other and appreciate what each other have to offer to one another and to the group as a whole.
yeah. 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 But it's the only way. We have to go all forward together.
Absolutely. I totally agree.
Yeah.
I'm so glad to meet you. Um,
Yeah.
I do feel like you're my twin. I mean, so many things you've said. I mean, we're different people, but so much of what you say is exactly what I've experienced and exactly what I see.
Mhm.
And 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 going back to your question of a few minutes ago, about what have I seen. This is what I see is that there are all these people who have somehow found their way onto this podcast that I didn't initially connect to, but was connected to me. And they are all saying things which I'm finding has this coherent, collective coherence, which is really, really important. And so the podcast will become even more important in the future than it is today.
Mhm.
And it's not
Yeah.
about me, it's about my guest. It's the collective wisdom of my guest.
Yeah. It's yes. 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 Yes.
And just thinking of that just fills me with hope. Because because I
Yeah.
know there are groups of people I want to know. I want to meet. I want to talk.
Mm.
I want to talk to 12 to 18-year-olds.
Mm-hmm.
They're my
Yeah.
next cohort that
Mm.
I'm going to
Mhm.
track down and find them in some way to be on my podcast.
Yeah, it was great. Within the COVID period, I was working with an international group who invited on Saturday morning some young people between 6 and 12, and they were thinking about wicked problems. It was great. It was great to see how they think,
That is
um, how they are. Of course, their imagination and observation is not that um present yet, I will say. And it's lovely to see that and to see how they relate also. Right.
when my sons were of age, they were in scouts, Boy Scouts,
Mm-hmm.
and
Mm-hmm.
I ended up becoming their scoutmaster. And we had a large troop,
Mm-hmm.
about 35 boys, and I had 18, 19 men and women who were my adult leaders. And what I found out was that when these guys would join us at 10 and a half or 11 years of age, they were they were coming they were moving out of primary school into middle school, and
Mm-hmm.
they were open to the whole world. And they were thinking about what my whole life is going to be at the age of 11 and 12. And it was just so much fun to say, okay, what do you want to learn? Where do you want to go? Let's work on this. Let's work on this merit badge. Let's learn this. Let's learn this. And they were so eager to learn. And and then when they hit 14, 15, their hormones change and all of a sudden shut down. You
Yeah,
know,
yeah.
cars and girls and getting into college, and it's all of that. But you see, I think that inherent desire to learn is there in every person, and what has happened is that it's been squashed by too many parents, too many teachers, too many.
Yes, because they put the emphasis on learning by heart,
Yeah,
and that's not really learning. That's not sustainable.
that's right.
So I know, and I was older. I was always playing and creative. Um, I followed anthropology, and we had a course visual anthropology, and it was about the old theories of optical theories. So, and I had to do my examination, and I came in, and I made three or four different instruments that change your vision. Like when you dream, you see double and things like that. I talked with the prof about that, and he didn't ask me any question. So I encourage young people to be creative and to do like that, because then how can somebody who's an expert in optical science or say, yeah, you don't know it? Yes, I know it. I put it in practice. Here, you have it. And that's interesting. But then, yeah, you have, yeah, I, yeah, I always kept that eagerness to learn. And yeah,
Well, it keeps us young.
it keeps us young, it keeps us active, it keeps us, yeah, I don't know if otherwise I want to live, to be honest.
I,
That's
I
maybe.
totally agree. Well, Evelyn, I am so glad to meet you. So glad to have had you on the podcast. I celebrate what you're doing. I think it's really important, and I'm glad you and Olaf are working together or connected together, because he's a fantastic guy, and his work is really important too.
Mm,
So thank
yeah,
you very much.
yeah. Thank you for the invitation. It was really nice. It was also really nice to know you a little bit better. Um, And yes, if I do my Lino prints this evening, I will send you a picture of it.
Thank you. Well, what I'll need from you is some information for the show notes. How people can find you, if they want to connect with you,
Mhm.
and where you find your Medium, your post,
Okay.
and a picture, so I can put you on the promotion of the episode. So,
Okay.
and this will go out sometime in mid-February. So I'm looking forward to seeing how people respond. So thank you for.
Okay. I will indeed. I will send you the link to Medium and to the website of my art, who is
Oh,
working.
send it all. It all matters. So,
Okay. No,
and
great,
and
great.
thank you everyone for watching. I hope you realize that there's something more. There's more places to go in terms of our learning. I hope you've realized that, and and I hope that it motivates you to go explore and see what new things you can find. And I thank you for watching the
Okay.
Eddie Network, and we'll see you next time here. Bye bye.
Okay. Thank you so much, and have a really nice evening.